Thank you for your attendance tonight at this wonderful event, Avenue to Awareness. Tonight we'll go on a journey with a group of amazing young men and women who will not only share some personal experiences with mental health, but also some important messages around how we can take time to improve our own mental well-being. I'd now like to invite Nikita up to speak. Thank you, Nikita.
Good evening. My name is Nikita and I am a perfectionist. The Oxford English Dictionary defines a perfectionist as someone who wants everything to be perfect and who demands the highest standards possible. Thus, by this definition, I am a perfectionist. And I think my parents who are in the audience tonight can vouch for this on my behalf. The many days I spent at my computer during high school ensuring my assignments were infallible, the countless hours I spend ensuring I've appropriately completed all the unnecessary reading my university degree requires of me, even when it's not actually mandatory. In seeking out perfectionism as something that I would ultimately consider a flaw, it's also something that makes me, me, the insanely organised, driven and dedicated woman that stands before you tonight. So I'd be hesitant to label perfectionism as something inherently bad, though there are dire consequences for the incessant pursuing of something that has no real criteria, no evidence to support it, and no model to base one's ideal on. And so when perfectionism divulges from school, from work, and from something with a criteria to mark you, you will always be left unsatisfied, chasing a goal that's not attainable because the only standard you have is one that you made in your head or the one you think society is judging you by. For me, being me and being my absolute harshest critic, I deemed my body and my physical health of an unacceptable, poor standard. I experience a mental health difficulty every day, and every day I work to overcome it. Orthorexia is the obsession to consume proper, healthful food. Now I know exactly what you're thinking. How can an obsession to be healthy be a bad thing? Well, understanding the nutritional content of food and labelling food as either good or bad is not necessarily bad. Though for someone with orthorexia, they become so fixated on their apparent healthy eating that it negatively impacts their well-being. I do not have orthorexia yet. Though, me being me, it's a very real threat to my well-being and most importantly, my mental health. For my entire life, I have experienced a plethora of health problems, as I'm sure anybody has. Now, these were nothing serious and they didn't require significant medical attention. Though they gave me a lot of pain, discomfort and embarrassment. I was frequently bloated, had eczema that covered my face, arms and hands. And in an attempt to overcome this, I decided to follow an autoimmune protocol diet, or AIP for short. Now, this is extremely restrictive. And when I say restrictive, I mean you can't have dairy, gluten, nightshade vegetables, don't know what they are, nuts, seeds, eggs. Pretty much the only thing you can eat is lettuce leaves. And a lot of them. Though by following this diet, you are able to understand how your body works and identify your own personal food sensitivities. So for me, I can't have a lot of dairy because it's the cause of my digestive pain and eczema. Being on this diet, you experience this whole other level of health. Suddenly, everything's working really well. I mean, you look great, you feel great, and it's not really sustainable. It's not meant to be followed forever. When I was on the diet, I felt great physically, but mentally, I wasn't doing okay. And fast forward 6 months after the completion of the diet, I still wasn't okay. I had an extremely obsessive and unhealthy view of food. I labelled food based on categories of good and bad. And for those of you who don't spend a lot of time in the health sphere, essentially anything that comes to food is highly contested and highly contradicting. Everyone has their own ideas about what constitutes as good and bad. For me, I avoided everything. No chocolate, no chips, no sweets, no biscuits, no pasta, no takeout. Everything down to the oil my food was cooked in. I analysed every aspect of my plate. I used to love going to restaurants to eat out with my friends, as this was a really social time for me. Though going out to eat gave me such bad food anxiety, I would end up feeling really sick. All because I'd be worked up over the most menial aspects, like the percentage of sugar in the salad dressing or what oil the food was cooked in. I realised I had a problem when I began to analyse everything I put in my mouth. Nothing was off limits. Not even bananas, because I was afraid the carbohydrate intake would be too much for that day. After months and months of beating myself up over this and labelling the food in good or bad, I decided I needed a little bit of help. Every time I walked past the mirror, I would double check to see if I was bloated. And if I thought I was bloated, then I'd beat myself up over the fact that I'd indulged in a Tim Tam or a little bit of salad dressing. I'd use food as a way to control what I was eating and a way to make myself feel like I wasn't feeling sick all the time. At this point, I had a really, really negative view of the way that I looked, but also the way I was feeling inside. I swapped my diet every day. All my conversations revolved around food. My social media feed was filled with health influencers, nutritionists, and doctors telling me what diet to be on and what food was healthy. After months of beating myself up like this, countless hours and nights spent researching food, and minutes just spent staring at the mirror, disgusted in my inability to stick to such a restrictive diet, I decided I needed some help. So I called a counsellor, who happened to also be a friend, though this was no easy feat, admitting I needed help. But after many failed attempts at trying to contact her, I finally did. And after explaining my struggle with healthy eating, she explained to me and gave me tools to relieve me of that blame, shame and guilt I found surrounding foods that I had labelled bad. She explained to me that it wasn't my fault. See, what was happening was when I consumed foods that I'd labelled bad, it would trigger a fight or flight response in my body. And one thing that happens in a fight or flight response is your digestive system temporarily stops in order to combat whatever's going on. So then, eating food when my digestive system wasn't working, that was making me feel sick. Eating the bad food wasn't compromising my health, my anxiety was. My brain was working on overdrive. In order to combat this mental health difficulty, I now use things like mindful eating, in which I sit and I concentrate on the food that I'm eating, the look, the smell, the taste. I use positive affirmations to feel secure in the way that I look and the way that I'm feeling inside. Through seeking help, I was provided with a set of tools that allows me to combat my, at times, really overbearing obsession with healthy food. Through the support of my counsellor, friends and family, I don't have orthorexia yet. And in being on this journey, I've realised that mental health difficulties, they come and they go. I'm always going to seek to be healthy, and I'm always going to be a perfectionist. And that's okay, because it happens to be a quality I truly love about myself. Though I'm sort of aiming to be real, not perfect now, because many facets of perfectionism really aren't attainable. Health has no criteria, and my mental health is equal to my physical health. Thank you.